everybody loves throwing Goku into random versus battles, and it ends up being pretty lopsided sometimes. A character will have one crazy hacks ability, and everyone's first thought will be, throw him into a battle with a literal god. You know, the guy who could destroy universes and transcend time, that same guy. But why not make this a bit more fair? What if they were to fight Goku with equal stats instead? For this video, we're going to take current Goku and equalize him. We'll be pretty straightforward and equalize three things: speed, strength, and durability. Equal speed will include traversal, combat, and reaction speeds. We're only equalizing things like speed and power, so other things like size, stamina, and intellect still are on the table. These fights will also be in character, and most won't be death matches. For antagonists, these will be death matches, but still in character. These characters will also know nothing about each other going into it. Each character will have two fights. Fight 1 will have equal speed and power, but no supernatural abilities. Basically pure hand-to-hand combat and no superpowers. I know some people might ask where the line is drawn for superpowers, so for this video, supernatural powers are things like ki blast, flight, transformations, anything else like that. Basically, if a regular human can't do it, they can't do it. Although, things like adaptability, mimicry, fighting styles, etc., those won't be considered supernatural. Even if these characters can grow at rates above normal humans, we're not excluding that. Goku can't use the Ultra Instinct transformation, or benefit from the power boost or accurate movements that come from it. But we still can apply the principles of Ultra Instinct to his regular state, because Ultra Instinct is a technique and a state of mind as well, based on real-world principles too. Of course, he has it at a level beyond any human, but still, this is technically just a state of mind and not anything supernatural. Or Yujiro, for example, who's going to be in this video. His adaptability and mimicry are insane, but not necessarily supernatural. Like, there's no magic involved, there's no weird power system involved, that's just him. It's above any human's abilities, but he's not using some sort of fictional power for it. He's just really smart. Then there will be a second fight. Fight 2 will have equal speed, equal power, and all abilities are on the table. Each character will be at their peak forms if they have transformations, and will be equalized based on that. So for example, Luffy's in this video. It's going to be Gear 5 Luffy versus Ultra Instinct Goku, with Goku being lower to Luffy's level. The only restriction in this battle is that no further stat boost can be applied to their powers, because otherwise it's not equal stats. So they can't power up on top of where they already are. Fight 1 is essentially a test of experience, technique, and growth. Can the fighting knowledge of the challenger overcome Goku's expertise? Fight 2 is meant to see if any abilities can overcome Goku, giving the challenger a better chance, and when I say equal stats, we'll be using the stats of the challenger to equalize them. We're not buffing them to Goku's level, rather we're nerfing Goku to their level. That's way more reasonable in my eyes. And I also feel like it's worth mentioning, if it weren't obvious already, this isn't how actual fights would go between these characters. We are purposefully nerfing Goku here. The whole point is that this is supposed to be equal stats. This is focused on abilities and battle IQ rather than strength and speed. And one last important note, reverse equalization does apply here. Challengers all have ki that Goku can sense and teleport to, for example, even if they can't utilize the ki for themselves. But also, on the flip side, Goku's affected by JJK's domains, for example, and curse techniques like Gojo's Limitless work on ki, etc, etc. There are potential spoilers ahead too, so make sure to check the chapters on this video to see which characters I'm covering, so you can avoid spoilers if necessary. We'll start off with something pretty easy, Deku. For Fight 1, Goku no diffs here. And just so you get a better idea of the rules, Fight 1 for each character will just be Goku in base. Again, no transformations. Fight 2 on the other hand will have Ultra Instinct Goku. There's nothing Deku can realistically do in this situation. Goku is simply a better fighter, coughing baby versus nuclear bomb in terms of experience. Not to sell Deku short, he's incredibly smart and adaptable relative to everyone around him, but I mean come on, he's fighting Goku. He's not a seasoned martial artist or genius warrior like Goku is. Fight 2 at least is a little more interesting for him. This will be Deku at 100%, with all of his quirks at his disposal. Deku is definitely a smart fighter, but Goku is also leagues beyond him. Deku has a good variety of techniques to utilize here though. Smokescreen is kind of useless because Goku can just sense his ki. But even if we didn't equalize Deku here and say he had ki, Goku doesn't even need to sense someone else's ki to fight them. Like, Gohan fought Lavender completely blind while his body was poisoned too. And Goku's a much better warrior than Gohan is. So a smokescreen isn't going to stop Goku, nor will it stop his Ultra Instinct. Danger Sense won't really help either. It's precognition, but Goku's automatic movements with Ultra Instinct are superior. And he could probably counter this too, like figuring out a way to attack that doesn't alert Danger Sense. Or he could even overwhelm it. Plus, Ultra Instinct already does what that does, but better. And that's assuming Danger Sense would even work like it should, because it can fail if it can't sense any negative emotions, like in the fight against Toga. And with Goku and Ultra Instinct, he's not really having any emotions, so who knows if Danger Sense would even do anything here. While we are ignoring stat boost, Gear Shift still would be useful in terms of acceleration, potentially allowing Deku to reach his top speed sooner than Goku can. For this video, it won't be a higher speed, just a higher acceleration. Although the quirk has drawbacks too, so even in a fight with stat boost allowed, he can't just use this constantly to get ahead of Goku. While his other quirks might be able to help out here, Goku still has way more at his disposal, and some of Deku's quirks are honestly kind of useless here. Not to mention, Goku is just a better fighter in general. For Fight 2, it's a low difficulty win for Goku. Next on to Luffy. For fight 1, I feel pretty confident in saying Goku wins this. In a battle with no extra powers, Goku has a clear advantage being a great martial artist and being as adaptable as he is. This isn't to undersell Luffy, it's just that Goku is that good. So what about with his powers? Fight 2 is where it gets a lot more interesting. These two have a huge array of abilities at their disposal. Gear 5 of course introduces a lot of variables into the fight. For one, with both of them being at equal stats, any attack Goku throws at Luffy could just be grabbed and bounced back at him. Like Goku can launch a Kamehameha, but Luffy could just grab it and turn it into a basketball or something and then dunk it on Goku. Something goofy like that. Luffy does have some level of Toon Force, but not to the extent that a lot of people think. He can't just pull a Bugs Bunny and rewrite the plot or whatever. Also, interestingly enough, Anime Beerus does have a blatant resistance to Toon Force, and within the same episode, Vegeta was able to understand how those powers worked in an effort to try and counter them. It makes me wonder how an equal stats fight between them and Luffy would go, but nothing implies Goku has this type of resistance. Presumably it's because Beerus is a god of destruction, and maybe Vegeta has some level of resistance to it at this point too, but nothing explicitly shows that Goku can do this. And before you bring up the fact that Goku did a Hakai in the manga, that wasn't a true Hakai like what Beerus could do, and it doesn't mean Goku has the abilities of a god of destruction. You might also bring up the fact that Goku had some other scenes like him breaking that manga panel, or that episode of Super where he talked to the narrator. And yeah, he breaks the fourth wall sometimes, but he's not a gag character. First of all, those are two completely different things, and second of all, Goku doesn't outright have some sort of level of Toon Force. Although, for the Luffy side, Luffy doesn't have unlimited Toon Force. That's just a no limits fallacy. He could do things that aren't logical and what he finds funny. But again, you can't just use that or the fact that he grows stronger the more he laughs to say he could do Toon Force things like on the level of SpongeBob or something. His unique Gear 5 abilities will still be crucial to this battle, but not in the sense that he could instantly curb stomp Goku like a cartoon character could. Watch my video about Peter Griffin vs. Goku, by the way. That's a better example of Toon Force versus Goku. Luffy also does have his own level of precognition, thanks to observation haki. This introduces what I think is the most interesting discussion of this battle. How would Luffy seeing the future interact with Goku's body automatically moving and reacting to any attacks? Goku using Ultra Instinct doesn't require thought, whereas observation haki does need some sort of focus. That's not to imply it's tough for Luffy to do, just that he needs some sort of thought put into it. Not just to actually activate the haki, but to also make use of the fact that he's seeing the future. And being too focused with this could be an issue too. In this case, I personally think Ultra Instinct is the better option, solely because everything is automatic. There's no thought put into it. As for Conqueror's haki, that wouldn't really do much into this fight, since first of all we're ignoring stat boost, and Goku's own willpower should be enough to resist the domination aspect of this. If anything, it would probably just make Goku excited like feeling strong ki. This isn't even taking stamina into account either. I didn't really specify this before, but we're using a composite Super Goku here. In the anime, of course, Goku didn't really develop Ultra Instinct much, and we haven't seen it at all in the movies. But at this point in the manga, Goku does have pretty good control on Ultra Instinct by now. And while Super Hero's movie didn't show this, we saw how great it was in the manga adaptation of the story. It's so great that even though Gohan overpowered him in terms of raw strength, Goku's raw skill and the abilities of Ultra Instinct allowed him to keep up in the fight. And while it does drain stamina, it's not draining at a rapid rate like before. As for Gear 5, Luffy still can't really use it for too long. Sure, by now in Egghead it's better than it was in Wano, but it has its own drawbacks, and at both points in each respective manga by now, it seems like Goku can use Ultra Instinct longer than Luffy could use Gear 5. If we keep stamina normal, then Goku can just outlast him in this fight. If we equalize stamina too, or just say it's not a factor here, that does make the fight a bit tougher. For all those reasons, I would say it's a mid-diff fight for Goku because Luffy does have a wide array of unique abilities, but I don't see any of that being a major issue for Goku to work around. And even with how amazing all of Luffy's abilities are, Goku has equally amazing or better abilities to work around that. Next, Baki Hanma. This will be more focused on Fight 1 because while Baki does have some weird abilities that are somewhat supernatural, there's no way in hell he's winning Fight 2. Like, what's he gonna do when Goku just explodes him with a Kamehameha? He's not doing shit against that. So we'll just be doing Fight 1 with no supernatural abilities. While Baki is a master fighter, Goku definitely gaps him in skill. Although for this type of fight, he performs better than most of the other people in this video thanks to him being as skilled as he is. Goku can adapt to different fighting styles quickly and has decades of knowledge beyond what Baki has. So far in this video, we haven't really covered these fights in depth because Goku wins without much else to discuss. But here's where something else becomes relevant in this fight, something that we didn't really discuss before because we didn't need to discuss it. Ultra Instinct isn't just a transformation. It's a technique too, and one that's based on real-world principles. It's a state of mind that Goku can take on. He won't be transforming, and his movements probably won't be as great or automatic as they are when he's actually transformed. But nothing's stopping him from applying the principles of Ultra Instinct to this battle. It's technically a state of mind, so even in this fight, Goku should have nothing holding him back from using it here. I'd say Goku wins this fight, probably mid-difficulty, and I'm sure he'd have a ton of fun against someone who's a great martial artist like him. Baki is still an excellent fighter, but he's definitely not on Goku's level. And in character, Goku would probably train Baki in the process, and Baki would definitely learn a bunch from him too. We've mostly been covering MCs so far, but let's use Yujiro here too. That's going to be a completely different battle. Just like Baki, we're only going to focus on the equal stats, no abilities fight. Although for the second fight, Yujiro would probably pull some bullshit with the narrator saying he learned to project ki at Goku's level. Jokes aside though, this would be like a tougher version of the Baki fight. Consider everything I mentioned with Baki and remember that Yujiro is exceptionally better than that. Plus, Yujiro is insanely adaptable and can copy things really easily. His adaptability is arguably on a level similar to Goku. Also, we can consider this one a deathmatch. I genuinely have no idea how this fight would go because Yujiro has such a wealth of knowledge, and we're not equalizing weight class here, so Yujiro has an advantage in terms of that as well. Even with equal speed and power, Yujiro is significantly taller and significantly heavier than Goku. Normally this wouldn't be an issue for someone like Goku, but with an opponent like Yujiro who actually is that smart as a fighter, this would actually make somewhat of a difference. If we're actually equalizing everything and ignoring the weight and height class differences, this is going to be a really tough fight for both. For the no powers fights, this is definitely the closest one of the whole list. I would say if not equalizing height and weight, then Yujiro would take this fight with very high difficulty. Like I mentioned, Goku can still handle larger opponents, but it does give a notable advantage to Yujiro. He's not just raw muscle, he has a bunch of skill to back that up too. And if we ignore those stats and assume that it's not a factor here, this fight is dangerously close to a 50-50. It's two fighters who are both geniuses at what they do, who can adapt to opponents just by seeing things once, and can analyze fights incredibly well. And like I did mention before, fight 2 could actually be interesting here, because we are equalizing universes and Yujiro does have ki. Now when we equalize this, that's mainly for Goku's advantage, so he could teleport to opponents and sense them, things like that. But giving Yujiro ki is dangerous because he'd likely be able to get a grasp on it and use his own ki blast too. Of course, he has his own control of chi, which exists in Baki, but he'll also have Dragon Ball's unique ki system. Fight 2 is definitely in Goku's favor with all the different abilities he has, but it's funny to think about the fact that Yujiro could probably copy a Kamehameha here right off the bat, just like Goku did originally. It all depends on how quickly Yujiro would adapt to Goku and what things he can adapt to. Fight 2 would probably be a low diff win for Goku with all his different abilities. Unless it runs really long and Yujiro gets the chance to learn everything, with the narrator glazing him on top of that. Fight 1 is up in the air, Fight 2 is definitely in Goku's favor. Next up, Satoru Gojo. Now, Fight 1 is a complete wash. While Gojo is a skilled fighter, Goku 100% has him beat here. A pretty low diff win for Goku. We're more focused on Fight 2 because, remember, we're lowering Goku to Gojo's level, so he's not pulling off any crazy speed feats or ripping reality open with the screen. This is like current Goku with Kid Goku levels of power. And since the stats are equal, Goku cannot win this one. With equal stats and verse equalization allowing Limitless to block ki, Gojo can block any attack from Goku. Thanks to Ultra Instinct being automatic body movements, Goku could still hypothetically fight in Gojo's domain even with all the overload of information. And that would be one way he could actually attack, but his brain would probably still be fried in the end. Goku has no way to get through Infinity either. His best bet is instant transmission, but unless he actually teleports inside of Gojo, he'd be teleporting into Infinity and would be facing the same issues. We've never actually seen Goku teleport directly into someone. But if he just uses instant transmission to teleport to Gojo, he's still in Infinity. And unlike the other sorcerers, he can't find a way through Infinity with things like domain amplification or whatnot, although maybe there is a chance Goku can adapt to cursed energy pretty quickly since we are giving him that as well. I feel like if the fight goes on long enough, maybe Goku could find a way to force his way through with domain amplification or something, and since the fight is in character, and it's not a deathmatch, he might actually have long enough to do this. But that's the only way I could see him getting through. You might bring up the fact that Gotenks, Boo, Broly, Gogeta, they all broke dimensions, but that's with their raw power. Goku doesn't have that here because it's equal stats. This is not something a city level Goku would be capable of. Not to mention, Six Eyes would analyze Goku right off the bat and give Gojo a ton of info that could help him. This would probably even let him realize Goku will dodge everything he has. Without a domain, Gojo doesn't really have a way to hit Goku while he's using Ultra Instinct. So for the most part, Goku can't do anything to Gojo, and all Gojo could really use is his domain. This is nice for Gojo because normal Gojo gets completely washed by Goku. Like, just look at the differences in speed and power. So for once, we could actually have Gojo win a matchup, but it won't be incredibly easy for Gojo. I think there are still ways Goku can get around it, so I'd say Gojo wins this one, but mid difficulty. We have one more JJK character though, and this fight's more interesting in my eyes. Sukuna, the strongest sorcerer in history. Not too long ago, I actually made a video about a highball Sukuna versus a Dragon Ball gauntlet. The point of that video was to glaze Sukuna as much as possible, and see how far he could go before his attacks would do absolutely nothing. Although I guess people skipped the rules of that because they were confused as to why I pushed him so far, but realistically, like I said at the end of that video, he's not making it past the 22nd World Tournament. I'll link that video above, you could watch it and see why he makes it that far, and how he could potentially go even further than that, at least when we absolutely highball him. For this, we're going to split it into two. We'll have Megami Sukuna and Heian Sukuna as well. Fight 1 actually isn't that easy for Goku. Sukuna is very knowledgeable and a skilled combatant, even without supernatural abilities. If it's just Sukuna in Megami's body, then Goku's going to take this fight, but it still is going to have some level of difficulty. I'd say lower mid difficulty. Because Sukuna is a good hand-to-hand combatant, but in my opinion hasn't shown the prowess for this on the level of Goku's. Plus, with Ultra Instinct and base, like I discussed before, that could really help. In his Heian body though, Sukuna has a huge height and weight advantage plus 2 extra arms. The reason I'm separating this in the first place is because this might be considered supernatural powers, and it definitely is supernatural and it's towing the line, but it also is just how he's built. So that's why I covered the Megumi section too, because if you consider his build to be supernatural, focus on Megumi Sukuna instead. But since this is just how he's built, it still is his peak and it's still worth covering. And that size difference is pretty huge too. At minimum, Sukuna is over 7 feet tall, but his height in panels is somewhat inconsistent, and he could even be estimated to be around 10 feet in some cases. But even at the lower end, he has over 2 feet of height on Goku and more weight as well. A major size advantage, 4 eyes, 4 arms, it's pretty unbalanced even with equal stats. If we're utilizing Heian Sukuna's body here, I'd say he takes this one high difficulty, because he's a good fighter and he's quick to think, plus he has a crazy build. But we also haven't seen enough to justify saying that he has martial arts skills on the level of Goku, but it definitely is a possibility. But this is basically Goku against a really smart giant. So I'd say it's a pretty difficult fight for Sukuna, but he might be able to actually win here. Unlike the battle where he's in Megumi's body and it pretty much guarantees a Goku win. But now for fight 2, which is obviously a lot more interesting. It really depends on how Sukuna alters his domain and binding vows here, and if he could use 10 shadows as well. If we take him after fighting Gojo, he has no Maharaga but has World Dismantle. As in, this is a full health Sukuna after the events of that battle. World Dismantle is important because it can negate durability, and if it hits Goku, with hand signs, chance, and aiming, plus Goku obviously being an Ultra Instinct, he would be able to dodge this really easily. There is a chance he could launch one off without any of the hand signs, chanting, or aiming, mainly by using a binding vow, and then that comes down to if Goku could perceive the slash or not. In my eyes, I think he could at least perceive some changes in the air around him or whatever, but even some of the best fighters in JJK who actually know how to work with cursed energy, they have trouble perceiving Sukuna's attacks too. Ultra Instinct moves the body automatically, but what if it's something that Goku actually can't perceive? That's really the big question here. Can he anticipate this attack? Sure, he has Ultra Instinct and can easily dodge it, but if it's beyond his perception, that would change things. I feel it's probably 50-50. Also, the extent to which he could alter his domain and sure hit will be important. Even with Ultra Instinct, a sure hit is a sure hit. How far could he actually change his attacks? Can he change his domain or vows to ensure a World Dismantle hits? Or even a Divine Flame? And how damaging would the random cleaves in the domain be to Goku? But most importantly, if Sukuna does pop a domain and satisfies the conditions for a Divine Flame, would that just end the battle right there and blow Goku up? At least for that question, yeah, we can't answer it. Since we're bringing Goku down to Sukuna's level, if he is equal to Sukuna, I would think he can survive this. It definitely would be damaging to him, but I mean, if Sukuna could handle his own explosion, there's no reason Goku couldn't here. Check out my video about Sukuna versus the Dragon Ball Gauntlet, I'll link it above. We talk about a lot of the same things there. So this equal stats fight basically boils down to 3 things. 1. Can Goku perceive and dodge the slashes, particularly the World Dismantle? 2. How far does Sukuna truly go with vows and domain alterations? And 3. Which version of Sukuna is this? With it being in character as well, Sukuna would definitely try to enjoy himself as much as he can in this fight, just like Goku. He wouldn't end the fight right away, he'd have his fun. If we take him before the Gojo fight, he has 10 shadows, which includes Maharaga, and he has a free full heal because he could reincarnate at any point. And obviously he has a reverse curse technique and can regenerate with that, whereas Goku can't self-heal to that extent. But if it is pre-Gojo fight, there's no World Dismantle, and it's just the rest of Sukuna's attacks, plus Maharaga and all the 10 shadows. Post-Gojo fight, Sukuna has multiple paths to victory, and I think this fight would be a high diff win for Goku, because he has a wider variety of techniques, although Sukuna is going to be a really tough battle. He won't go down easily, but he still will go down. Goku would win this one. As for pre-Gojo fight Sukuna, I think Sukuna might actually take this one. The downside is he doesn't have World Dismantle, but the upsides are the fact that he has a free full heal during battle, plus he could utilize 10 shadows, notably Maharaga. If Sukuna activates Maharaga and Goku doesn't kill him right away, then Sukuna will have a direct counter to Ultra Instinct or something else that Goku's using. I think this would turn the fight into Sukuna's favor, and for this version of him I'd say it's an extreme difficulty win for Sukuna. And for the final battle we have Andy from Undead Unluck. First off, Andy's not a villain, so this isn't a death match, but even if it were a death match, obviously he can't die. For fight 1, where they have no weird powers, Andy is shown and stated multiple times to be one of the smartest combatants in the entire series. I think a lot of people forget this because of how crass he could be, but he's actually a really smart person, like incredibly smart. Even other genius characters in the story consider him to be exceptionally smart, especially from a combat standpoint. Current Andy has centuries of combat experience at minimum, and has also been alive for billions of years by this point. And this is just talking about Andy's experience, not even Victor's. So in an equal stats fight with no superpowers, I think Andy actually does have a shot at victory here. It's definitely not going to be easy. It's probably a high or maybe even extreme difficulty win here. The issue is how quickly Goku would adapt to him. But Andy does have an insane amount of experience on his side and is also really analytical, just like Goku. As for fight 2, the one with actual powers, Andy could fight much more recklessly compared to Goku, since he can regenerate and doesn't need to worry about damage. So he could push his body to the absolute limits. He doesn't have to be concerned about his own physical well-being. Even though it's not a death match, him not being able to die still does really help him here, besides the obvious stuff with his abilities. One really big thing here is the fact that he can create soul weapons and attack or restrain Goku's soul, and maybe Goku could seal Andy with the Mafuba. But it wouldn't really hold him for long. Andy has escaped sealing from the literal concept of sealing before. If he can astral project out of that and use his soul attacks, He could beat Goku that way without even having his physical body. The biggest issue is actually hitting Goku while he's in Ultra Instinct. Andy is also way smarter than people give him credit for, just like I mentioned before, and he's regarded as a crazy analytical fighter. And with his combat experience, I think he would find out some sort of way to win here. But just like the Sukuna fight, it really is up to Goku's perception. Based on what we've seen in Dragon Ball at least, there's nothing that really suggests he could do something like what Andy can do with soul perception and manipulation. So if Goku can't perceive Andy's soul attacks, that would be a really big issue because first of all, these attack his soul directly and will be far more damaging. Second of all, if he can't perceive them, then would Ultra Instinct even dodge them? Sure, it could probably see Andy choreograph his moves. Like if he tries to shoot a soul bullet, Goku will obviously dodge, he sees a finger gun being pointed at him. But what if Andy's using any sort of soul weapons, or splits himself into 4 and uses it that way? He could directly attack or restrain Goku's soul, and especially if he restrains Goku's soul, preventing him from moving completely, that would be huge because Ultra Instinct isn't going to dodge something if Goku can't move in general. So, even with Ultra Instinct's automatic offense and defense, Andy might actually have ways around it. Plus, he's just as analytical of a fighter as Goku is. I think Andy could take this fight high difficulty. And if the soul attacks interact with Ultra Instinct like we were saying here, where Goku can't perceive them or dodge them automatically, then the fight would be even easier. Not to mention, there's also the fact that if Andy gets tired out, or something happens to him, Victor's always there to fight too. But that's the last fight for this video. I think it's fun to look at fights with Goku this way because instead of him having an insane power advantage, this evens the playing field and lets the other fighters shine too. Because obviously in most cases, Goku can work around everyone else here. Like, some of the people we put him up against aren't even close to his level. I think this is a much better way to compare their abilities and mentality, instead of a completely lopsided fight with one guy with hacks versus Goku. Even with hacks, that usually is still really unfair. Let me know what you think below. I know it's a scaling video, so be civil in the comments. But also, if you'd like to see a follow-up video similar to this with other characters, I'll definitely consider that too, just let me know below. Anyways, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video.